You have seen Mayweather. The dancing, the shoulder rolls, the 50-0 record they love to throw in your face. Pretty boy, pretty record, pretty legacy. You have seen Pacquiao. Blinding speed, relentless pressure, 8-division glory. The Filipino Flash who made the entire world go absolutely crazy. And you have seen these modern giants, Fury, Joshua, Wilder, standing there like living monuments, flexing those God-built bodies at 6'5", 6'6", staring down at everyone in the room like they already own the place. You have watched all of them, and you have cheered for all of them. Now forget every single one of them, because not one of those men carried the kind of darkness that walked into a boxing ring in the 1980s, wearing black shorts and black shoes with no socks. Not one of them made entire arenas go completely silent the moment they stepped through the ropes. And not one of them could turn trained professional killers into frightened children simply by making eye contact across a ring. His name was Michael Gerard Tyson, and calling him a boxer is about as accurate as calling a nuclear bomb a firecracker. What you are about to watch is not a highlight reel of great fights. What you are about to watch is a series of executions carried out by the most savage, most ferocious, most psychologically terrifying force the heavyweight division has ever seen against a collection of arrogant giants who were foolish enough to believe they had a chance. These were not weak opponents or soft picks. These were massive men, monstrous men, men with every size advantage imaginable, men who looked at this 5'10" dark figure across the ring and genuinely believed they could handle him. They were all wrong, every single one of them, and they paid for that mistake in a way they never forgot. This is Iron Mike.
Nightmare Tyson. That guy was a nightmare in the ring. I mean, really, if he missed you with his left, then missed you with his right, he'd bite you.
Jose Ribalta was not a normal human being by any standard. Even inside a division where enormous men are completely ordinary, Ribalta's size was described by people at ringside as genuinely abnormal. The kind of body that makes trained boxing analysts pause mid-sentence just to process what they are actually looking at. When they placed this man in front of a young Mike Tyson, the logic seemed obvious enough. How could this compact, brooding machine possibly handle someone built like a 10-story building? They called it a dangerous mismatch. Ribalta came out doing exactly what a smart giant is supposed to do. He sniped from long range, and then Tyson began to move. Not frantically, not desperately, but with a slow and deeply unsettling patience. Like a predator who has already made his decision, the confidence Ribalta had carried into that ring was being taken apart, piece by piece, and everyone watching could feel that something unstoppable had been set in motion. Ribalta went down, the way enormous things always go down. Iron Mike went straight back to work with no hesitation and no mercy, tearing into his wounded opponent with a pure and savage efficiency that left no room for escape, no safe corner, no hope of survival, until the referee finally stepped in to end it. Mike Tyson won by TKO. In December of 1989, Alex Stewart walked into that ring, carrying a body that genuinely looked like something Greek gods would be proud of. Massive and powerful, Stewart was not just physically large, he was genuinely dangerous. The kind of heavyweight with hands that had already ended professional careers and power that made matchmakers nervous when they scheduled fights around him. He came into that fight completely convinced that he had the one thing none of Tyson's previous opponents had managed to bring. He believed in his size, he believed in his power, that this night was going to be different from everything that had come before it. The opening bell rang, and Mike Tyson did something that was at the same time the most disrespectful and the most terrifying thing imaginable. He acted as though Alex Stewart was simply not there. The size difference, the power, the reputation, none of it appeared to register at all. This mountain of a man standing in front of him was processed by Tyson's brain as nothing more than another obstacle between him and the exit, and he moved toward it accordingly. Then the king found the opening he was looking for, that fraction of a second where years of training and cold instinct collapsed into a single devastating moment. And when Stewart's guard shifted just slightly, Tyson put everything he had into one surgically precise punch that sent Alex Stewart to the canvas and kept him there. The biggest men always have the furthest to fall, and Stewart fell hard, fast. That was always the cruelest part of facing Iron Mike. He never gave you time to see it coming. Tony Tucker was not some carefully chosen stepping stone or a soft opponent designed to pad a record. This was a man who entered that fight carrying a perfect 34 wins and 0 losses, completely undefeated. Tyson came out and did exactly what he always did against bigger men. He walked his opponent down, not rushing, not throwing wild punches, just applying that slow and suffocating pressure that was his true signature, that creeping and completely unstoppable advance that sent one message to every fighter he ever faced. There is no distance that will save you. There is no clinch tight enough to hold him off. Tucker fought back well, landing punches that would have rattled or stopped most other heavyweights in the division, like Tucker was hitting something made of iron rather than flesh. And then Tony Tucker made the single worst decision available to him. He got overconfident, started taunting the king mid-fight, using body language and gestures to signal that he believed he had already solved the puzzle. He thought he was different from every man who had stood in that spot before him. Those pockets were completely empty. What followed was Tyson making a cold and deliberate decision that the time for patience was finished, and he began removing every trace of Tucker's confidence from his body with a round-by-round precision that left no room for argument, no room for escape, and no room for doubt about who the better man in that ring actually was. When it was over, there was one undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, and there had really only ever been one possible answer to that question. His name was Mike Tyson. Andrew Golota carried a reputation that made people in the boxing world genuinely uncomfortable. Golota had not only used, but had perfected over years of fighting dirty against everyone who stood across from him. His combination of power and willingness to fight completely without rules, he was certain, could do what no one else in the division had managed to accomplish against Iron Mike. The bell rang, and Tyson entered a place that no other fighter in the history of the sport has ever been able to access, somewhere beyond technique and tactics and athletic competition, a pure and consuming fury, where every punch he threw was aimed at taking something from Andrew Golota that went beyond points or rounds. He was after the man's dignity, his courage, his will to keep existing inside that ring. Then came the shot that the entire arena had been building toward without knowing it, a perfectly placed steel fist from Iron Mike that sent this Goliath not stumbling, not falling, but actually sliding across the canvas like a toy that had been thrown across a room. The crowd erupted, and Andrew Golota lay there on the canvas, staring up at the arena lights. Something broke inside Andrew Golota that night that no cornerman or trainer or motivational speech was ever going to put back together. He refused to come out for the next round. This trained professional fighter, this feared heavyweight, chose to stay on his stool rather than face one more minute inside the ring with Iron Mike Tyson. He chose his stool, he chose his safety, and he chose a shame that the sport of boxing never allowed him to forget. There is no lower moment in boxing than what Andrew Golota chose that night. He had a real chance at something important, and he selected cowardice instead, and history has never forgiven him for it. At just 19 years old, Mike Tyson was doing something the heavyweight division had genuinely never witnessed before. He was not climbing the rankings the way young fighters are supposed to do, picking manageable opponents and building carefully over time. He was demolishing the division fight by fight, reputation by reputation, and the people who ran the sport were starting to run out of men willing to step into the ring with him, to put an experienced and dangerous veteran in front of him. Reggie Gross was a man who had been in real fights before, who understood how heavyweight boxing actually worked from the inside, and who knew exactly how to use his size and his reach and his ring experience to neutralize aggressive young fighters who wanted to force an early war. He arrived with a sensible, professional plan, and early in the fight, that plan was producing results. moments, Gross stayed disciplined, kept his distance, picked his shots with real precision, and made Tyson work hard for every step of progress he tried to make. But there was one fundamental problem with Reggie Gross's perfectly built strategy, and that problem was that in the ring with Mike Tyson, no distance is truly safe. No corner offers real protection. The Dynamite Kid went off with one cataclysmic punch that did not simply knock Gross down, but laid him out completely flat on the canvas, face down, motionless, in a way that made the entire arena fall silent for one long, stunned moment. Gross somehow found the will to stand back up, and it was the worst decision he made that entire night. Tyson did not see a brave fighter refusing to quit. He saw wounded prey, and he finished the job with the same cold efficiency he always brought to those moments. Mike Tyson remained undefeated. The teenage destroyer kept walking forward, and the heavyweight division kept running out of answers. Before the championships and the fear and the legend, a young teenager named Mike Tyson had been beaten by Carl Williams in a sparring session. But Williams took that moment and turned it into a public story. Now, years later, with Tyson standing at the absolute top of the heavyweight division, he came into the fight, smiling and confident, ready to write himself permanently into the history books. Williams came out searching for that old sparring rhythm, looking inside this devastating champion for the ghost of the teenager he had once handled. He was looking for something that had been burned completely away, year by year, fight by fight, by a man who had spent every day since that gym session turning pain and humiliation into fuel. Then Tyson's left hook landed, placed with the precision of a man who had been mentally preparing for this specific moment for 8 years, and it turned Carl Williams lights out in the very first round. 8 years of carried debt collected in a single second. The arena erupted into something raw and primal. Williams crumpled to the canvas, and Mike Tyson stood over the man who had once bragged about handling him, standing there as the undisputed master of everything the heavyweight division had to offer. The lesson that night was as simple as it was brutal. Debts always come due eventually, and Mike Tyson was the most patient and most dangerous collector the sport of boxing has ever seen. Frank Bruno was something completely different from every man who had come before him in Tyson's path. This was not another large opponent, or another giant who believed his size would carry him through. He looked at Mike Tyson and saw something he could handle, something his extraordinary physical gifts could outlast and eventually overpower. There was no way Tyson was going to beat him, he said, but this is where the fight becomes something more than a straightforward Tyson performance. Bruno fought back, and he fought back hard, catching Tyson with combinations that visibly wobbled the Iron Man and sent the crowd into an absolute frenzy. For a handful of electric and genuinely unforgettable seconds, the thing that was not supposed to be possible seemed to be happening right in front of everyone's eyes. And then you saw the quality that separated Mike Tyson from everyone else who ever wore boxing gloves. It was not his power, as frightening as that power was. It was not his speed or his technique. It was iron character, the ability to absorb the kind of punishment that ends most fighters' nights, to process it, to silence whatever doubt it creates, and come back from it. He survived that stretch not through luck, but through something built into him at a level that went deeper than training. In the 5th round, Tyson decided the performance had run long enough, long before the first bell rang. Landing a massive right hand, and then another, offered absolutely zero protection from the force that Iron Mike generated when he decided a fight was over. Mike Tyson won. The most impressive body in the division had proven once again that physical size means nothing against the most terrifying mind the sport has ever produced. Mike Tyson remains a mystery that the sport of boxing has never been able to fully explain. No analyst, no scientist, no psychologist with all the tools available to them existed inside a body that most of his opponents literally looked down upon when they stood across the ring from him. 7 fights, 7 giants who arrived with every advantage that size and experience and physical power could provide. 7 men who had winning records, championship belts, dangerous reputations, and a genuine belief that they were the one who had finally figured out the answer. 7 men who had everything they needed, except for the one thing that turned out to matter above everything else: an accurate understanding of what they were actually standing in front of. Every single one of them looked at Mike Tyson and saw a short man, a man without the measurements, a man they could outreach and outwork and eventually overpower if they just stayed patient and stuck to their strategy. They built their plans around that assessment, walked into those arenas with their confidence fully intact, and discovered in the worst possible way that they had completely misread the situation. Because Mike Tyson was never simply a boxer, he was a force of nature that happened to operate inside a boxing ring. He was the darkest and most devastating presence the heavyweight division has ever seen. And the baddest man on the planet was not a nickname or a marketing phrase. It was a plain and verifiable statement of fact. And the Giants paid the price for forgetting it. Every single one of them paid that price. The full story of Iron Mike has not been told yet. His secrets are not all out in the open, and there are chapters of his history that still have not been opened. We will see you soon.